Hey guys, SoCal Val here. You are listening to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast.
Welcome everybody back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle channel. I am your host for this interview, Adam Cousins, and today we are speaking to somebody who revolutionized the world of wrestling in 2012. It is Andy Quildan from Revolution Pro Wrestling. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm doing very good, thanks. Very envious of your background. It's better than mine. I've got nothing.
Well, I always try when we have guests to have a background that represents what we're talking about, and we are talking about all things Rev Pro behind me. So I always make sure the banners are out, so to speak. Andy, thanks so much for coming on and just chatting to us briefly. But before we get into the story of Rev Pro and whatever else, I just need to talk about High Stakes, which was the last big show you've put on. You had a couple of shows at the 229 and whatever since, and I know you've got a few big shows coming up. But High Stakes, Will Ospreay's last UK independent booking for now, whilst he goes and transcends across the United States and kills it in AEW, which he already has been doing. I was at the show, bell to bell, fantastic. It was great to meet Will prior to the show as well. But because of the show being Will's last independent show, and generally because of what the crowd expects from a Rev Pro, was there any additional pressure on you to deliver that, more so for Will than for the crowd?
Well, we kind of feel that pressure all the time. I always say there's no such thing as a small Revolution Pro Wrestling show. It doesn't matter the size of the venue, the location in the country. We will always deliver the absolute best. Obviously, the spotlight gets shone on certain shows due to perhaps location, venue size, and circumstance. But we try to make it very clear that it doesn't matter where you go to watch a Rev Pro show. We always have that same sense of responsibility in delivering the absolute best. Obviously, when we look at High Stakes, there was again that sense of responsibility of giving Will the send off that he absolutely deserved, especially considering what a servant he's been to not just Revolution Pro Wrestling, but the whole of British professional wrestling, waving the flag, and not just limited to his work in the ring, but his work with younger talents as well. He's one of the most open wrestlers. Like, there's been several shows recently where he's not been in front of camera, he's not been in front of the crowd, but he's been backstage and he's been helping talent, and that's something that he has taken upon himself to do and share in his experience. So certainly there was that pressure to deliver for Will. Also, I feel there was a pressure to deliver in terms of for that venue as well. We saw the feedback from our December show at the same venue and wanted to correct a lot of people's perceptions on the venue, and we did it in a number of ways, through changing the seating configuration of the venue, to making it clear what seats didn't have backs before people purchased tickets, and making those seats considerably cheaper than the others. And yeah, I think everything came together. Everyone understood the significance of the occasion. Everyone understood the eyeballs of the wrestling world were on them, and everyone understood the opportunity. And I speak about opportunity all the time, and it's quite symbolic in many ways that you look at the likes of Will Ospreay, Zack Sabre Jr. They were the guys that people were noticing when we put on shows in the past. So, for example, early on, Will wrestled AJ Styles. People would have come to the show to watch AJ Styles wrestle, not knowing who Will Ospreay was, and walking away talking about Will Ospreay. And it's quite fitting that people will come into that show to see Will Ospreay, and then they may have been walking away from it talking about a Luke Jacobs, talking about a JJ Gale, talking about a Connor Mills, So it was nice how things came full circle. But like I say, not necessarily any more pressure than we usually put on ourselves, but we did understand the significance and the importance of the occasion.
Yeah, certainly. It certainly felt big, even just being in there, that arena for the first time. I missed the other show previously. I was recovering from heart failure at the time, so I missed that other show at Crystal Palace, but I went to see this one. I thought it was tremendous. What blew me away initially, my first Rev Pro, and sort of going around in a circle to get back to where I want to get to, but I first went to a Rev Pro show even last year. It was Bethnal Green, funnily enough, last year. And what blew me away was I went there, and I'd been to some independent shows in previously before going. But I walked into the Bethnal Green venue. I was like, oh my God, you've got a stage, you've got a Tron, you've got, like, there was some smoke and pyrotechnics. It was really impressed me how that happened. I know some promotions do it, but it just felt big walking into Bethnal Green. But walking into the Crystal Palace one was just felt, well, it felt like a big time event, which was covered, like you say, around the world and on your on-demand service as well. But you did have some visitors at high stakes, ones that which we know and love from our television screens. You had the AEW people there. Tony Khan was there. Darby Allin was there. And also, as a surprise for us as well, we had Orange Cassidy defend his title at the start of the show. When did you know that they were coming, and when did you know that you was allowed to utilize Orange Cassidy?
So I got a call from Tony on maybe the Friday night, without going into too much detail, but yeah, and things came together pretty quickly following that. But it was Tony's idea to have some involvement on the show. And Tony's someone I respect a lot, someone I consider a friend, and someone who prior to AEW attended Revolution Pro Wrestling events. And yeah, he's almost like a breath of fresh air in the industry of professional wrestling. I mean, so many times you get people who want to keep everything for themselves, don't see the benefit of people around them growing, and don't have any interest. So they will, shake your hand with one hand and stab you in the back with the other. There's many people within, it's been well documented, without having to name names, throughout the years. The stories of wrestling promotions working with other wrestling promotions, but it's always when it suits one person, and I've been a big advocate for forever. And anytime people ask me the question about, will you work with so and so, will you work with so and so, the answer is always the same. I will work with literally anyone when it makes good business sense, but not just for myself, but for both sides. It's got to make sense for both parties. And I believe very strongly that, despite the fact that, look, let's make no bones about it, we're a very small independent professional wrestling promotion, but we treat ourselves very seriously. We take our wrestling very seriously, and we believe the quality of the product that we are delivering is equal to any product in the world. And bell to bell, I strongly believe that. If you follow the stories, I strongly believe that we've got the best storytelling, we've got the best matches, best in-ring action, and it can hold up with any product in the world. What we don't have is a huge team of people behind it and tons of money behind it. And we're just waiting for the world to find out about us. And we use stuff like this as an opportunity to show the world what we're all about. But obviously, it's very important that those we work with understand what we can bring to the table and understand the quality of our product, and don't just dismiss us as as a secondary thing. And I think that what I can say about Tony Khan is Tony Khan's a wrestling fan. It makes me laugh when people criticize him, and look, everyone's got a right to an opinion, and by all means you can criticize the product, but to criticize his intentions, it makes me laugh, because ultimately he's a wrestling fan like every one of us, and he can respect what other wrestling products do and what other wrestling products bring to the table. And yeah, I don't believe in tribalism in wrestling. I believe that, look, we all support professional wrestling, and professional wrestling is this crazy little niche. Our style of wrestling is a niche of a niche, if you will. Fighting over it is absolutely ridiculous. We have more in common with other wrestling fans than probably 80% of the population, because we all share that love of professional wrestling, the thing that is so hard to explain to people why you love it, the thing that is dismissed by the wider public. We're all fighting the same battle for acceptance in this niche product. So, that's why I believe everyone should just get along with each other. And you don't have to, like I say, you don't have to like what the other side is doing.
No.
But you should treat it with respect, and you should not dismiss other products.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I personally I enjoy both. There's bits I don't like in AEW, and there's bits I don't like in WWE. But it's the fact. My point is, I love wrestling, and that's the middle part for me. And even on this podcast, we have people that don't watch AEW. Like some of our co-hosts don't watch AEW. They respect it, but they'll only watch WWE. It's the thing that they love, and sometimes even vice versa, or even just wrestling in general. I sit here, watch and review WWE, AEW, and TNA on a weekly basis because I love wrestling, and each offers something different to me. So WWE very much the entertainment, the presentation side of things, and they've got some decent storylines. AEW is the more of the impactfulness in the ring, and they've still got some good storylines at work, but it's about what they do in the ring. And then you've got this little underdog over here like TNA who are quietly going about their business and have been for at least a good few years, that get into that standard where names are joining them like Nick Nemeths and Alex Hammerstones and people like that will draw me into it because of that, and because they're slightly independent. Because Will's obviously gone and wrestled over there, and obviously Mustafa Ali's just gone over there as well, and he was at high stakes for argument's sake. So for me, I totally agree with that comment about tribalism. It annoys me and it grinds me, especially on socials when you see it all the time and you're just like, shut up and just like what you like. If you don't like something, fine, but just respect what the other people are doing, because all they're doing is what you love anyway, right?
Yeah, I think that's the key. Like ultimately, I understand why you support your team, get behind your team, but you don't need to do it at the expense of bringing someone else down. Like, worry about bringing your own side up, and then ultimately understand that professional wrestling, like I say, it's just this niche, and it's the one thing that we've all got in common.
Yep.
And rather than infighting, if we use that negativity to positively promote the brands that we're passionate about and just see the brand of professional wrestling in general, then I think from the outer public, it would be a lot more welcoming. Yeah, I don't think anyone will be able to change my mind on that one. And again, I love pro wrestling, and I love pro wrestling when it's done well. There's things about WWE I absolutely hate, but then there's things about WWE that I love. And I think that, to dismiss one thing outright is a disservice to the thing that you love.
Yeah, exactly that. I'm a big advocate of just watching wrestling and enjoying it. And you can have an opinion, but just be respectful. And also remember, there was times that there wasn't competition, when it was only one, and then that was all kinds of stuff going on there. But anyway, let's get back to this. Let's get back to RevPro. This is my keen interest. Now I know you worked at obviously IPW UK and refereeing and all that stuff. Now you obviously split from IPW to create RevPro, but it doesn't happen overnight. What was the process for you for saying, right, A, I want to go my own way. B, this is what I want to create. When did the paper, what you wrote down on paper, become you saying, I'm going to do it?
So look, the reality of the situation is, so for IPW, I was a booker from the second year. So I can't remember when they started. It was 2004, 2005. If they started in 2004, I started in 2005.
Yeah.
If they started in 2005, I started 2006. So however it works out, I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was a referee before that.
Yeah.
And I became a booker of IPW because so Dan, the promoter, he lived in Portsmouth, which is where I lived. Where I went to uni at the time, and he would come to watch FWA shows that I'd referee referee on, and he would often drive me either to or back from those shows, and we'd just get talking in the car about wrestling, our philosophies about wrestling. I feel like myself, I had very strong opinions about professional wrestling. I've always been very passionate about it. I always remember Jim Ross talking about the best wrestlers being students of the game. So I decided from a young age, I had to become a student of the game. I, educated myself as much as I could. I read books. I listened to interviews. There wasn't as many shoot interviews as an insider stuff in those days as there is now. But, whatever I could get my hands on, I would consume. I'd watch tape trades, literally every single aspect of the business. So I'd form some strong opinions of the business, and also as a position of a referee, where often I'd referee the whole card. I used those opportunities in order to assess what worked on shows, what didn't work on shows, what followed, what flowed. So, what works well going on second, for example, what works well going on before intermission, what's a good way to open a show, what's a good way to present a show in front of a group of people who've never watched wrestling before, what's a good way to create that episodic style of wrestling, you know. And you'd get an ear for it, and I'd always listen to the crowd. And as well, because I was kind of very much refereeing like up and down the country for many different promotions, I was also seeing other other talents that weren't necessarily being utilized. It was very like I say, it wasn't tribal, but it was very much like the way it used to work back in the day was you'd put on a show, and for example, you would have a car full of people from Birmingham and a car full of people from London. You know, you'd save your expenses. You wouldn't, you'd kind of budget it in the cheapest way possible. And I guess I was always of the mindset of, well, what if we started to, bring in better talent, etc. And when I say better talent, it's not a knock on the talent that was being used. It's a case of, what if there's two people in Birmingham who are very good, but then if we bought a car from Manchester as well, there might be a couple of people, and just make it, that opens up the doors to be able to create matches that you can't do and whatever. And anyway, my vision of pro wrestling, I utilized as a booker, but obviously it wasn't my money because I was just the booker, right? And I was working within confines of these are the people that are booked, what can you do with them, etc. So it wasn't necessarily it wasn't necessarily me going out and picking all the talent. There was certain talent I was like, I want to use this guy, etc. And then as things kind of progressed, to cut a long story short, we wound up kind of co-promoting some shows, and then we didn't really. Again, there was different philosophies. We didn't always agree on what we were putting on, but ultimately, and again, I think that from Dan's viewpoint, a lot of it was a lot more business orientated, and I can completely understand that because it was his money, and then when we were going co-promoting, then it became a case of it's my money as well, so I'm putting my money more where my mouth is, but at the same time the budgets still have to be agreed from both sides, and there's a thought process from one side about saving money, and then my side was just presenting the best product because my mindset was the best product will in turn lead into creating more revenue, but it's a longer process and you risk more money on the way. Ultimately, we did about a year maybe of co-promoting, and then we wound up promoting our own shows. And that's when I really started to develop the identity of what became Revolution Pro Wrestling. So my shows predominantly were the shows which took place in Sittingbourne. But again, I promoted all over the place, but again, it was solely my responsibility. So despite the fact it didn't have my name on the marquee, I never had an ego about that. I just wanted to create the best professional wrestling shows, and I thought I'd work very hard on this brand, and and that's what we were doing. That's what we're continuing to do. And then after, Dan would kind of dip in and out of promoting after. And he wouldn't even be at the shows that I was promoting. That's the extent of it. He would dip in and out of doing his little shows, and then every time we'd do something which would garner attention, he would put more attention onto the product, and it wasn't going to work,
No.
And I felt like every time he was promoting a show, it was bringing down the brand which I thought I was building up. And look, I should have dealt with it there and then, but it just carried on and whatever. Because I just for example, like I'd registered the domain name. So for example, we're running shows in Sittingbourne. They weren't on the posters. It never said ipwuk.com. It said kentwrestling.com or something.
Right.
Wherever the shows were, we had like portsmouthwrestling.com and birminghamwrestling.com and all the different domain names. So, in the local advertising was done very differently in those days than it is now. It was predominantly print marketing, so flyers, posters, paper adverts, and wherever those local people were directed to would be obviously where they purchased tickets. So the internet was a thing, and people were growing confidence in purchasing tickets from the internet. When I first started, it was all cash on the door, people were growing confidence in purchasing tickets on the internet, but I made sure that always they were going to sub-sites rather than the main site, because that gave me ownership over what we were doing. So the transition, where everything came to a head, I just stuck by my laurels. I had the mindset of what my vision of professional wrestling. I wasn't prepared to change it for anyone. I wasn't prepared to, something that I had taken that ownership over for all these years, and I guess properly got into it. I guess our company running the shows properly formed in 2009. And that company was obviously the contract name, which was all the contracts to all the venues. And so I put so much time and effort and everything into this, but yeah, essentially just happened overnight. And it was where I think it was maybe the 25th of August 2012. Maybe that week, we had a conversation, and Dan was, I guess, trying to bully me into booking what I didn't want to do, or coming into his mindset of, this is how you need to do things. I had no interest because I've been working on my own for years prior to that point. And I just said, like, I I'm just going to do my own thing. I think he misunderstood. Like, I don't think he understood the. I think he put more stock in a brand name. I knew it was never about the initials. And it's still, like, again, now I feel like the brand of Rev Pro is a lot stronger than IPW ever was and Rev Pro has ever been. And I do believe that there is a lot behind that brand, but ultimately I still believe that what rings true to people is high quality professional wrestling, storylines, bell to bell action, and delivering the absolute best and showing people you're doing the absolute best with the resources that you have at your disposal. And I genuinely believe that's what we've been doing since day one. And like I said, it was almost like an overnight transition. It was a week before the show. And I actually spoke to Dave Sharp, who was at the time was 4FW. Now I think he's King Pro.
Yeah.
Spoke to him about it. He designed the original Rev Pro logo on that week. We didn't say anything. Like, the communication between myself and Dan stopped completely. Didn't tell him what we were going to do. And then on the day of the show, I just kind of announced at the top of the show, all the champions are the same, rosters are the same, everything's going to stay the same. The same wrestling you know and love, but now we're going to be known as Revolution Pro Wrestling.
Wow, what a story!
And we basically started everything, from everything I built from that point was essentially erased in terms of the social media presence and everything, and we started from zero and worked our way back up to where we are now. And I don't regret it for a second, because it gave me freedom, it gave me flexibility, it gave me the ability to run with my own vision of professional wrestling, and it meant that I wasn't handcuffed or handicapped, and I was able to do exactly what I wanted to do, and I was able to put my money where my mouth was, and I was able to live or die based upon my own decisions and my own direction. And yeah, I've not looked back ever since.
Well, I can certainly say that the hard work and the dedication you put in has paid off, because the brand at the minute is probably one of the biggest that I've known outside, obviously outside of WWE. But even now, you're getting people from the States, like the Wrestling Observers and the Fightfuls picking up on the brand, and you're obviously having a hand in creating you're helping the careers of like the Ospreys, of like the Leon Slaters who've just gone over there, and Danny Luna, who just won a championship at the weekend, and they've all done it themselves with their own passion and their own hard work. But obviously Revolution Pro has dividends for that, because you put these on their shows for them to shine and get noticed by these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key. Like, I never take credit for other talent successes. I'm so proud of everyone who's ever worked in a Revolution Pro Wrestling ring, who then goes on to, pastures new and gets to make some real money doing this. Ultimately, I'd love to be able to, like, long-term goal is to turn Revolution Pro Wrestling into a place where people can make real money. But, it is what it is. We're a very small company. I don't think people realize how small we are. Like, most of the time it's a team of one, which is myself, and as a result of that, I have to wear many different hats. But like I say, the key with talent going on and going further, I don't take credit for any of that stuff. All I do is I give them the platform to be able to achieve, and to be able to find out who they are and work it out for themselves. And sometimes people get in the way of themselves, so sometimes people learn valuable lessons along the way. I can put them in front of the right people. I can't put contracts and pens in people's hands, and so that's why I'm very keen to say I don't want to take any credit for any success of a Will Ospreay or any of these people you've listed, because it's their talent and drive and dedication that gets them there. All we do is we provide them with a canvas to paint their art, and we do everything we can to present them in a way that I feel they should be presented, in a way that I feel will see people fulfill their potential, and we'll see people in the right light. And that's all we try to do.
Do it very well, that's for sure. Speaking of the roster itself, obviously you have, the regulars that want to, you've got your champions and you've got your regulars. For somebody that we sponsor some wrestlers in the UK scene, and I'll get into them at the end when we do our sponsor shout outs. But when it comes to, like, for example, Will Ospreay's now gone to AEW. You've got a few there. I could name them, but I'm not going to. But there's a few obvious ones there that potentially are getting close. How do you then look for the next batch of talent that were coming through and coming up to represent? Obviously, they've got to be doing the circuits and all of that stuff. Is it important also that they utilize the training school and everything they've got that's there for them to be noticed by your good self in order to get that opportunity?
Well, look, we've got two training schools. So again, sustainability is something that I've spoken about since day one, and people don't always see it. People, again, people can just look at the shows and make their own minds up. But something for me, I've dedicated my life to this, and the sustainability of it, and that means walking before we can run. That's meant doing the small venues before we can do the medium-sized venues, before we can do the big venues. That's meant not being able to spend money on talent to be able to spend a bit more on talent, and that's meant having to use our own production and understanding that if we're going to be able to run at the level we are with a number of events we're going to run out, then we have to do a lot of stuff in-house, and that's meant having to learn how to do stuff ourselves. And that sustainability goes up and down every single facet of the business, and that's not just limited to those things we've spoken about. It's also including talent. So we've obviously got two training schools. We started off with just one in Portsmouth. We've recently, over the last year or so, opened up our school in London. Of course, they're the perfect avenues for people to be able to come and be noticed by myself, and be recommended to myself, and for us to try and mold people into the professional wrestlers we want them to be, to try and get them, again, I'm big on trying to get people to think about wrestling differently. I feel like that's one of the strengths. And if you look at the people who've come out of, I'm talking more specifically about our Portsmouth school, because I'm a lot more hands-on with the Portsmouth school, but the same philosophy from the Portsmouth school extends to our London school as well. We think about wrestling a lot, and different ways of presenting it. And it's not just a case of going through drills. This is how you do this move. This is how you do that move. It's about ways of seeing. It's about context. It's about presentation, and it's also about how to carry yourself within the business as well. And I genuinely pride myself on the fact that we've got so many young talents that we've been able to bring through, and as well, as someone who presents shows. And again, there's always the temptation to just book the bigger names, but we've never been about that. We've always been about booking younger talent as well. And I've spoken about this philosophy in interviews in the past, but it's all a process. And sometimes when you use younger talent, you sacrifice. You could put a banker, people like, why don't you use wrestler XYZ? Well, the thing is, we try to do a lot of stuff in-house. So again, there is a completely separate side of this where you can go out, you can make a name for yourself outside of Revolution Pro Wrestling, and you make enough noise, and I see what you can do, and I bring you in, I give you an opportunity to kind of show me what you can do, and then you can come and become a part of the picture that way. That's one way of doing it. Another way is to come through our training school. And we've also had pros who, have trained elsewhere and then come into our training school to almost see what we're looking for in them. and it's kind of, and they've used that as an avenue to get onto shows. But yeah, when you're using younger talent, you could have a banker, you could put someone a more rounded worker in, a safer bet, if you will. But if you are going to achieve the top level in this business, you have to put people in uncomfortable situations, and they have to experience those uncomfortable situations and learn from those situations and grow from those situations. So, so when I say talk about sacrifice, it's almost like, you know, that you may not be getting the same level you'd get if you brought in a more experienced hand, but you're thinking about tomorrow instead of just today. And I've seen so many promotions across the years who only focus on today. And like you say, like our wrestlers are in high demand. They really are. And like, even from a standpoint of, you know, we look at a Will Ospreay getting signed, and you know, people who go off, and you know, for example, Leon Slater's just signed to TNA, Danny Luna the same. Obviously, we're still lucky enough to have access to them, but that access to them becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you're over reliant on those wrestlers, and you have to have wrestlers who are ready to step up and be in that position. There's a big reason. If you look at that high stakes card, look at the breakouts, some of the breakout names on that card, and you look at JJ Gale, who's come through our Portsmouth School of Wrestling. You look at Luke Jacobs, who's an example of someone who's come from outside of that and got my attention. And you look at Connor Mills. Right? Look at those guys. I think it's been very hard pressed to look at those guys and say they didn't make a name for themselves. They didn't make those minutes count at high stakes. Right? They're ready to get straight into those positions that, for example, a Will Ospreay might have left. You know, Leon Slater wasn't on that show.
No.
And Leon Slater is one of the most talented wrestlers on the planet. He's going to be a future superstar, guarantee you, because he's got the right work ethic. He's got the right mindset to professional wrestling. He wasn't on that show, but dare I say he wasn't missed on that show because of the amount of young talent we've got who can come in and take those places. And that's not to say Leon Slater is not a young talent, because Leon Slater is 19 years old.
Yeah.
But whilst we've got a 19-year-old Leon Slater, we've also got an 18-year-old Cameron Kai.
Yeah.
You know? So, like I say, like, we have got a conveyor belt of talent coming through. We're always, and the guys like True and Lacey, for example.
Yeah.
And True and Lacey have done it again differently. They're not necessarily guys that have got the headlines elsewhere, but they're guys that have gone and put the reps in elsewhere, got the respect of their peers, and got those peer recommendations that have put them in that position. And they've come into that position and they've excelled each and every time because they've got that in-ring experience. They've got the hours in the ring, you know, and they're eager to learn, eager to progress, eager to work a different style of professional wrestling, you know. So from every avenue, I feel like we've got stuff covered. And it's just such an exciting time at the moment. We've never had a younger, a deeper, and a more exciting roster. And when you look at the names that have come through our roster, that is really saying something.
Yeah, I was glad that you mentioned Mark True, because we work with a promotion that where Mark's been a stalwart of, and he's when we get there really early, we help with the ring and stuff like that. He's there. We get in, and as soon as that rings up, he's in it. And he's
it's that work ethic, it's that mindset, you know, and that's reminiscent of Michael Oku, right? He's someone who, again, people think it's part of the story. It's not part of the story. Oh, yes, well, the greatest stories are etched in reality. You know, Michael's a guy who would come to help with the ring. Michael only made his debut because he was there helping with the ring and we needed an extra body. You know, and that debut was against the great O'Khan.
Yes.
And then 5 years later, we went full circle and he won the Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship from the great O'Khan. And we used that as a part of the story, you know. And to me, that is the beauty of it, when people understand and learn that hard work pays off. A lot of people talk the talk, but they don't want to walk the walk. Mark True and Kieran Lacey are two guys that they can talk the talk, but they walk the walk. They're there helping to set up. When they're not on shows and they don't have bookings elsewhere, they'll be there. You know, and that's just something about them, you know. It's that character, that kind of drive and determination, and that's the type of personalities that we want on our team, you know. And we're not interested in people who have egos. We're not interested in people who, you know, are just in it for themselves. It's that kind of mentality of we're all in it together. We're all pulling in the same direction. And like I say, like at the moment, I feel like we've never had a more positive atmosphere backstage. And again, like, we can talk for ages, but you know, like the difference in locker rooms from now to what they were when I first got into the business like 21 years ago is night and day, you know, and it's you know, people talk about negatives all the time, but the positive is that in general, on the whole, there's always going to be bad eggs, you know, and our job is to try and weed those bad eggs out. But the locker room is never been a nicer group of people to be around.
Yeah, exactly that, and I agree with that. I've said we've been in locker rooms, well, sort of, yeah, locker rooms, as I call it. For say we work within a company that does that. We have our titles on the scene as well, so we know we've been there. We put on shows, we've sponsored full shows. We're doing that again, and I'll get into that later. In terms of partnerships, so you do obviously you have a partnership. There's quite a few. There's obviously MLW, CMLL, the show that's coming up very very soon, and obviously New Japan, AEW. How important is that you utilize those? Not only because of the name value, but because of the experience it can help these younger people's grow.
Well, it's all about diversity of styles. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about professional wrestling is that, you know, we were speaking earlier about, you know, people have things that they like.
Yeah.
Right? It might be one wrestling promotion they like or one style of wrestling they like. But the beautiful thing about professional wrestling is it's an international language. Anyone can understand it. And it is a cabaret. And the best wrestling shows have a diversity of different things on the shows. So you might have a hard hitting match, a high flying match, a technical match, a ha match. You know, every part. You should never discount any style of professional wrestling because every style of professional wrestling has its place. I think that there is a big difference in kind of. I think that often people look at styles of wrestling as a shield. So you know, so for example, hardcore matches, right? Not necessarily my cup of tea, right? I don't like them, but I believe they have a place, and I believe when done well, they're very, very good, right? But I also believe that there is a such thing. It doesn't matter what style of wrestling is. There's bad wrestling and there's good wrestling, right? And I think that people can often hide behind the smokescreen of, well, you just don't like hardcore wrestling, and it's just like, well, if it's not done well in context, then why? That's why I don't like it, you know. And like, I just believe good wrestling is good wrestling. It doesn't matter what genre, it doesn't matter what style. Good wrestling is good wrestling. I think ultimately, that's what we want to get behind. And working with these different organizations, yeah, is absolutely fantastic. I think CMLL in particular is a completely different style of wrestling to what people are used to. And I love the Fantastica Mania shows because there was something so different. And we're coming again May 19th in London for two more Fantastica Mania UK shows featuring CMLL talent. And I think that to me, really, I mean, I've seen a lot of lucha, but when it was came we were going to be officially working with CMLL, that's where I took a greater interest and started watching the Friday nights at Arena Mexico with a lot closer detail, not just looking at the stuff that people recommend, and you begin to get a real understanding and appreciation for that style of professional wrestling. And me, in my mind, my mind starts clicking, and I'm like thinking like how this style of professional wrestling, obviously, the way it's presented, the way it works in Mexico, is the way it works in Mexico, right? You wouldn't go and try and change that. But in our Western culture, we can bring that in the way they present it, and it works as a standalone show. But it's a very tourist thing in Mexico. But my mind's going, I'm thinking, how can we integrate this style of wrestling in with what we do? With our which British wrestling really is a hybrid of styles already. So how can we incorporate that lucha libre style? And it's just great that obviously our guys get an opportunity to work in that style, get tested in a different comfort zone, and to understand that they are probably a lot better than they think they are when they can go in there. There's always a sense of trepidation when you're doing something that you don't know and haven't got the experience of. And when they're able to go and hang and the styles mesh together, I think it's fantastic to see. I think relationships are important in any business, and none more so than professional wrestling. And I think that it's great for our fans because it means our fans get the opportunity to see wrestlers that they would never get. When I was growing up as a fan of professional wrestling, to think that I'd have the opportunity to be a short car ride or a train ride away from all these world class wrestlers, I'd be pinching myself. I don't think people realize how easy they've got it and how good they've got it right now. I think You know, we had that sense of realization during the pandemic, and then when we came back from the pandemic, but I think very quickly everyone's fallen back into taking all this stuff for granted. You know, like, oh, that's like an extra hour away. I won't bother with that one. I'll wait till next time. You know, it's so unbelievable the level of talent that is available to us, and how the world is local now, and how we can now watch that wrestling. You know, you can watch a CMLL show live. You can watch New Japan Pro Wrestling live. You know, that was never a possibility before, and now it is. And we can watch highlight videos of the stuff. We can watch music videos with a click of a finger. You know, you talk about a professional wrestler, we can Google that wrestler right now, and we can find out information about them. We can find matches of them. We can find highlights of them. It's so much more exciting now than it ever was. But now, not just that, we've also got the opportunity to see those wrestlers on our doorsteps. And those relationships enable us to give us almost a unique selling point of many of our shows, because you're getting to see first time matches, as well as, you know, that high quality in ring action, as well as the stories that, you know, that we take great care and love and into, you know, presenting those stories if you want to follow them deeply, or you can come to a standalone show, not know the stories and still have that understanding for it. All of that stuff combined, and on top of that, you get to see matches which just aren't possible for anyone else in the world to be able to put on because of our unique position. You know, it's just such a fantastic proposition to a wrestling fan, and that's what excites me. So many matches, so many first-time matches you see in Revolution Pro Wrestling that then you later will see on the worldwide stage. Not to say that we shouldn't be a worldwide stage, because I absolutely have conviction in my product and know that, you know, like I say, it can stand up with anything in the world.
It certainly can. I think it can. I think it can already. I know you might think you've got a bit further to go before you can do it, but I certainly think you could put up against the best right now. And you
Right,
would.
look, I think, like I say, from a show perspective, from a live show perspective, from bell to bell, I believe we absolutely can. But there are steps to go in terms of, for example, production. But it's not a. But if you look at our production and you look at where we were to where we are, we've made tremendous steps, and we're continuing to invest in that side of things. You know, I think it's very easy. I kind of take it as a compliment that, you know, people will look at our production against, you know, a higher level. You know, look at our production against TNA, for example. But TNA is owned by a TV company. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is one individual who's got this crazy dream, who's got a dedication and a work ethic second to none to try and make this work, right? So, and he's trying to do it in a sustainable manner to stay in business, continue to grow, continue to move forward, and put ourselves in a position whereby, you know, in a year from now, you look back to last year and you see where we are now to where we were, right? And please do not forget the fact that in 2020, our operations ground to a halt.
Yep.
Our makeup, our business model is different to the majority of other independent wrestling promotions in the United Kingdom in terms of, this is my full-time living. We have not just got one show on sale at a time. We've got multiple shows on sale at a time. We've got lots of money invested. We've got, you know, like, just so much. Everything is reliant on everything else to happen, and everything ground to a halt, you know. And we had a big show on sale at that time as well, right? And we are recovering from that, and we stayed in business against all odds. We ran empty arena shows where all the talent got paid. We had to we got the pipe and drape at great expense. We did the COVID testing at great expense. We did the hotels at great expense, right? And we did it because of, well, I guess, first of all, my love for professional wrestling. It wasn't perhaps the smartest thing to do financially for the company, but also it meant the Revolution Pro universe was able to continue to turn. So then when we got back to live shows, we hit the ground running. And I think that that's all paying dividends now. And you see the growth and development of those wrestlers who are in those empty arena tapings. JJ Gale at the start of it was just a contender. Callum Newman was just a contender. You know, we see Michael Oku, Ricky Knight Jr., their growth as a result of it. Robbie X, you know, all of those guys and girls who were part of that, you know, they were very much a part of something special. And I think that people take that fact for granted. We generated zero revenue outside of the first two shows for that, right? And there were a number of reasons behind that. But, you know, we did it all in good faith, all with good consciousness, and, yeah, we're still paying back our debts as a result of that. But in turn, we've come back from that. And last year was the biggest year. The year of 2023 was the biggest year that Revolution Pro Wrestling's ever had. 2024 is tracking to be even bigger. So, I think that can't be understated.
No.
I will never, ever say that our product is inferior to any other, because I do not believe it is. I believe our product is the absolute best. We promote pro wrestling at its best, and I absolutely believe in it. I just understand that we have limitations, and that limitation comes down to budget and not having sponsorship money, not having TV money. We can only spend what comes in. And what comes in is our ticket sales, our on-demand money, our merchandise money. And we're looking to diversify and grow our business, and we will continue to do so. And as we continue to kind of generate more, we will put more back in, and then we'll be able to continue to grow. But every year we get stronger than the year before. Every week we get stronger than the week before. We're not going to have 100% success rate all the time, but I'd rather try and fail than not try at all. And that's kind of our mindset at the moment. And that's where we're pushing, and we're pushing to make this thing bigger, and we're pushing to continue growing. And again, the only people that will benefit from the continued growth is the talent that continue to work for us, and of course the fans who we're presenting this product to.
Absolutely. And like I said, I keep saying it, you're doing a fantastic job, Andy, albeit with a very small team, which is absolutely amicable, and crazy that you've done as much as you have, and you've done so well. As we start to wrap up, what you've kind of mentioned that you want RevPro to grow and grow. And so is it about the future? Is it about making these marginal gains and then propelling do you want to go quicker? What if, say, we're sitting here in 22 years time having another interview with you, would you like RevPro to be?
Well, always I'd like to be bigger. Like there's no doubt about it. But I'm kind of a realist in the sense that we have to do stuff gradually. If look, there are accelerators that could come along. Should someone come along with a ton of money for a TV deal, the right TV deal, not TV for the sake of TV. Should someone come along with a ton of money, am I confident that we could use that to present a product that will resonate with the masses, and a product that and to put money into the right areas to grow a very accelerated rate? Then absolutely. But if that doesn't come along, then that's fine, because we will continue to chug along and continue to make those marginal gains. So I can't predict the future. I can't predict where we're going to go, but I will say we will be in a better position in 2 years' time than we are right now, because that is the way our business has always worked, right? And sometimes you have to take a step back to take a step forward. I'm not saying that can't happen, but it is, it could potentially happen. But ultimately, we're just going to keep pushing forward. And I feel like it's always, it's a bit of a cop out to say, like, I don't know where we'll be, but I do know where we'll be. I do know we'll still be here. I do know we'll still be plugging away, and I do know that we'll still be looking to move on to bigger things, and looking to kind of continue to do what we do, but on a larger scale. If you asked me 2 years ago, do you think you'll be running the Copper Box Arena? I'd say absolutely not. We did it, and we're going to do it again this year. And we're going to continue to grow, and that the Copper Box in and of itself was a big risk. It was a calculated risk, and it was a big decision. And in many ways, AEW making a decision to run Wembley Stadium, that gave me the confidence I needed to be like, well, do you know what I mean? Let's make our own big leap.
Yeah.
And we did it, and it paid off. So let's do it again. Let's try and get bigger, and let's see where this thing takes us. There's no limits, there's no ceiling. We're going to keep going, and we're going to keep pushing, and hopefully we're going to make it.
I think you will. I certainly think you will. But Andy, as we wrap up now, can you just let people know, if they don't already know, where can they find RevPro on socials? Where can they buy tickets to your shows? And I know you've got the shows pretty much booked for the whole year in certain venues, 229, Stevenage and Sheffield and all that, and you debut in Coventry this weekend. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. Yep. So we've got so basically, look, revolutionprowrestling.com is a place to get all the tickets. Another example of where we're moving stuff. Before we were dealing with gigantic tickets, we've moved stuff in-house. So again, we want to play in our own sandbox. You get all your tickets direct from revolutionprowrestling.com. And you're not going to be directed to another website. Everything is within revolutionprowrestling.com. Obviously, each show's got a different URL, but you just go there on the main page. You can see a listing of the events, and you can just click buy tickets, go straight through to the page to purchase your tickets. That's the best place to find out about upcoming shows. RevProOnDemand.com is the place to watch our shows online. We've got a very, very vast back catalogue of shows, but also we present 9.5 out of 10 shows we present live. So you can watch them as they're happening on RevProOnDemand.com, all included within the price of the subscription. Very quickly after the show, you get the live version of the show goes straight up in the archive, and then shortly after that we put a higher quality show up. But recently we've been able to get the shows to a very good standard, so it's not even as if people are waiting for that high quality show to higher quality version of a show to come out, because we're able to get the live stream version to that high level. And RevProOnDemand.com is the backbone of what we do, and I can't emphasize this enough. So if you happen to look, I understand people pirate professional wrestling, I get it, right? What can I do to stop it? There's nothing I can do to stop it in many ways. People pirating our shows, it helps the reach of our shows, it helps the brand awareness for our shows, but all I ask is, if you're doing that, if you watch it and you enjoy it and you think this product is worth anything and you want to see this product grow, then please support us by subscribing to RevProOnDemand.com, because it's the only way you get access to the entire video library and you get to watch the shows live as and when they happen, and the money goes directly back into RevPro, and it enables us to reinvest in stuff. And for people who are like, well, why would I pay? Because the quality is not as good as a WWE or AEW. Well, if you want it to get there, then pay and we will reinvest. So you will see, and we never shout about that reinvestment, but we make little adjustments, little improvements, and you will see that as time goes on. So RevProOnDemand.com is the place to see all the Revolution Pro Wrestling shows, and it's the best way to support us outside of coming to the events live. But RevolutionProWrestling.com's got all your links. It's got the link to the shop, it's got the link to the on demand, it's got the link to our training schools, and like I say, we're doing this one fan at a time, and it's a process. It's very much a process. I understand for some that process can be frustrating, but we're working within what we have. We're working within our limitations, and I feel like we're doing a very good job at it. And I defy anyone to, with the same resources, or even rewind and say from our starting point where we started. I see people all the time talking about their shows, independent promotions talking about their shows, when they're, and almost patting themselves on the back about their shows with their small team and what they've been able to achieve, and almost dismissing us in the sense of we're not that small operation as well. And I take a compliment to that, but it also makes me chuckle a little bit, because if people really understood the drive, the work ethic, the determination, and just the grind every single day, the grind to make this happen, then I think people would be looking at us very, very differently. We'd make a fantastic documentary on Netflix, which would then turn into a fantastic, well-paid TV series. So just throwing it out there in case any Netflix execs, or we go to Amazon Prime, whatever, Disney Channel, Disney Plus, whatever, we'll go anywhere. So yeah, just that's it really. I don't really think there's much more I can say. I think you can see how enthusiastic I am about the brand. I think you can feel how much I believe in this brand, because I well and truly absolutely believe in this brand. We've got a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon. Big anniversary show, all in weekend, which are opportunities to show off to the wrestling world. We've got lots of new areas we're going to be venturing into before the end of the year. We're going to be in Manchester. We're going to be somewhere else up north, which we'll kind of hopefully reveal very soon. We're going into Barcelona in April.
Yep.
We're going into Berlin end of August. And the world very much is our oyster. And we're just looking to continue to do this and continue to grow it in a very, very positive way, and continue to put our money where our mouths are. And that's it.
Yes, indeed. And just before we go, I need to reel off a couple of bits. So apologies, and it won't keep you too long. Shout out to the Hitting the Turnbuckle Women's Champion, Aluna. She's defending her title on the 12th of April against Kira Kimura. Shout out to the HTTB Men's Champion, Smashing Mike. He's defending against James Ellis on April 21st.
Gets tired. Smashing Mike never ggets tired.
He doesn't. He doesn't do bum weight either. And he's going to be defending against the brilliant James Ellis with his manager, Brewski Blanche, on the 21st of April over at Ignite. Speaking of Ignite, quickly, we are doing our sponsored show again. Buckle Up 2024 comes back on July the 14th. Done it last year, sold out. Hopefully we're going to get sold out this year. Names to be confirmed. Can't say any on this show, unfortunately. Just last quickly thing, just shout out to our other sponsors people who we sponsor: Taylor James, LA Taylor, Aluna, Adonis Payne, Artemis, Pro Wrestling Carnage, Ignite, and Beers and Beatdowns in Pro Wrestling Carnage. Lastly, the few interviews that we've got coming up soon. Obviously, there's Andy's, there's JJ Gals. We're talking to Stephen Baldwin Jr., the son of the icon Sting. We'll be talking to Kelly Six. We'll be talking to Devon Dudley, Ken Shamrock, and Mr. Anderson, all coming up this month. But Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It's been a great insight into Rev Pro, and I'm very grateful that you've got Rev Pro over here, especially we've got something that we can go to here in the UK, which sets a really high standard. I love going to the events. One of the second event I went to, I think Connor Mills was in my lap within the first 5 minutes of the show, which kind of that show was, I think it was like a 10-man main event, 10-man tag main event, and it was just nuts in the 229. Good luck with whatever you do, or good luck with keeping what you're doing with Rev Pro. We will be there at the Revolution Rumble, so you'll see a lot of reels. Funny enough, the last show we went to, High Stakes, are the reels that we put out on our Instagram were like the highest view that we've ever done at shows we've been to. So that's, again, more testament to you than us. But thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you at the end of the month on Easter Sunday. We'll be spending our Easter Sunday with Revolution Pro Wrestling. As Andy said, go to revolutionprowrestling.com. I think it's /shows, and it'll give you the list.
Yeah, but if it, just on the main page, it's got everything there, just listed on there. You don't need any forward slashes or anything. You'll see it all. It's a great resource to get your tickets. Not so much news. If you want news, then probably X/Twitter is the place to get your get your news. But it was just a hard job maintaining the website, and it's just easier to kind of just rather than have an outdated front page, just to focus on the shows and focus on purchasing your tickets for the shows. And that's something that we're aiming to get better at. We've all got something we can get better at. So that's what we're working on. But yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad we could give you some good impressions for our high stakes show.
Yeah.
And it shows you, highlight us more, and you'll get some more engagement.
We certainly will be highlighting you, Andy. Don't worry about that. But guys, he has been Andy Quildan, the Rev Pro promoter. I've been your host, Adam Cousins. And until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe,